But I guess my bigger question is, if we're saying that there's no election that's legitimate if there are efforts to suppress the vote, then when has there ever been a legitimate election in this country? Trying to suppress American votes has been going on since the founding of this country.
That's not what we're saying, Jake. People should be confident in the protections that we are going to continue to enforce. But also we know it's not long ago history. It is recent history.
Sure.
When the former president tried to overturn the outcome. That is different than the effort to suppress the vote. We need to fight against both. We need to ensure we're using every tool at our disposal. Obviously, a lot of those would be through the Democratic National Committee, and a lot of those are going to be through local efforts. And that's what the president was attempting to speak to.
But he didn't say the elections are going to be legitimate and I'm going to be there making sure that they are legitimate and we're going to fight and you need to turn out to vote. I mean, he basically refused to say that definitively that they're going to be legitimate. Vice President Harris today also with Savannah Guthrie also refused to say that the results will be legitimate. She pivoted to saying, quote, "We as America cannot afford to allow this blatant erosion of our democracy and in particular the right of all Americans who are eligible to vote to have access to the ballot unfettered." So I hear what you're saying, but you do not seem to be on the same page as the president and vice president.
I've spoken with the president about this extensively. I speak on his behalf. He is not questioning the legitimacy of the 2022 elections, but it is also his responsibility, and the vice president's too, to be very candid and clear-eyed and communicate with the American people about what is at risk and what they need to ensure they know what their rights are and what the former president attempted to do in 2020. And we can't forget and stop talking about that.
Moving on to Russia and Ukraine, I want to get your reaction to what the Ukrainian President Zelensky said. He said he's clearly not happy with President Biden's comments. His suggestion that a minor incursion by Russia into Ukraine might prompt a lesser response and less NATO unanimity than if he scales a full-scale invasion. Earlier today, Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, tweeted, quote, "We want to remind the great powers that there are no minor incursions in small nations, just as there are no minor casualties and little grief from the loss of loved ones. I say this as the president of a great power." Are there any plans for President Biden to talk to President Zelensky directly?
He's talked to him a couple times in the last few weeks, and he may in the future. I have nothing to predict for you at this moment. But as you know, our Secretary of State is on the ground in Europe. He just spent some time with the Ukrainians a couple days ago with his European counterparts this morning. He's talking to the Russians tomorrow. And we've been in touch at a very senior level from senior officials with Ukrainian leaders just today. They know where the president stands. And the president reiterated again this morning, if the Russians move into Ukraine, if they move militarily into Ukraine, there will be severe consequences. We also know, Jake, and you've covered this extensively too, that back in 2014 and since then, they've used a number of tactics, whether it's cyber or the little green men, people who are members of the military who are not in uniform moving into Ukraine. There are a range of tools at our disposal as well. And let me be clear, we are very unified with NATO. We've been working to ensure we're unified. We are unified, and you've heard a number of those leaders speak very publicly about their intention to act should Russia invade.
Well, you've called the movement of troops across the border an invasion, but noting that something like a cyber attack might be considered a minor incursion. Doesn't that give Putin, or how do you respond to the Ukrainian officials that our reporters on the ground in Ukraine spoke with that said basically President Biden gave a green light for Putin just to stage a quote-unquote minor incursion?
That's absolutely not what our intention was, or not the message we've sent. The president, most importantly, has sent to President Putin. I'd also note this morning, Jake, that we announced a number of sanctions through the Treasury Department of officials who have been spreading misinformation from Russia into Ukraine. We've also provided more security assistance, defense assistance than any year in history over the last year. So we are delivering, and we are helping support them and putting to account even before they invade, to make that clear. But it is different. There are different tactics that the Russians use. We've seen that in the past. We've been very vocal about that in the last couple of weeks. Misinformation, false flags. We all need to be eyes wide open about that. And we have a range of tools to respond to that. And we will do that in a coordinated way with our partners and allies should they act.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki earning her paycheck this week. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.